A time when swords clashed, castles rose to the skies, and history's fiercest battles were fought. The heroes of this era were knights, mercenaries, and peasant warriors. Yet all of them shared one common struggle: survival. But survival wasn't just about winning battles. The real fight began every day with finding a mouthful of food to fuel the body. So, what fed the strength of those hardened men behind the swords and armor? What kind of food kept their muscles strong, their wills unbroken, and their hopes alive? In this video, we are going to dive deep into exactly that. If you're ready, let's embark on a journey down the dusty roads of time. First, we must understand this. In the Middle Ages, being a soldier was far more than just a profession. It was an identity. It was a destiny. Most boys started learning the art of war at the age of 12 or 13. And this art wasn't just about swinging a sword. It included hardening the body against hunger, thirst, and exhaustion. In a war, surviving wasn't just about defeating your enemy. It was about mastering hardship, mastering your own body's limits. Finding a hot meal during long campaigns was almost a miracle. Thus, a soldier had to learn how to nourish himself well enough to maintain both his physical strength and his mental resilience. In fact, some historical records tell us that entire armies lost morale, mutinied, or retreated without a fight, simply because of hunger. This is why securing food was just as critical as winning battles. A medieval soldier's day started with the first light of dawn. Unlike today, daily life wasn't neatly divided into 3 meals. More often than not, they only had 2 main meals, one in the morning and one at night, if they were lucky. In the mornings, they would consume whatever could be prepared quickly and would provide enough energy for the day ahead. This often included barley porridge, oats, or a piece of stale bread. If available, they might add a bit of cheese or, rarely, a few dried fruits. Meals were never about pleasure. They were purely about survival, about having enough strength to endure another grueling day. The staple foods of soldiers included hard breads, durable, stone-like loaves that could last for weeks, salted meats, especially pork, preserved with heavy amounts of salt, legumes, lentils, chickpeas, and beans, dried fish, particularly salted cod, common in the northern regions, cheese, especially goat and sheep cheeses, dried fruits and nuts, for extra energy and endurance. Fresh fruits and vegetables were considered luxuries and were rarely available. And sometimes a soldier's entire breakfast would consist of nothing more than a gulp of cold water, because often there simply was no food, because before a battle, securing provisions was never a simple task. So what exactly did these soldiers eat? First and foremost, bread, but not the soft, fluffy bread we know today. Their bread was dense, rock-hard, and crafted to withstand spoilage. It was made from coarsely ground flour milled in stone mills. Often, bits of grit, stone fragments, or insect remains would end up in the dough. Broken teeth were a common affliction among soldiers. Salted meat was another primary food source. Pork was especially preferred because of its high-fat content and ability to last longer with heavy salting. Beef was also eaten, though it was considered more expensive. Legumes like lentils, chickpeas, and beans were lifesavers. They were filling, nutritious, and easy to store for long periods. Armies stationed near the sea would often consume dried fish. Salted codfish, in particular, could last for weeks without spoiling. However, it was far from delicious. In fact, it often tasted rotten. But a little bit of protein could mean the difference between life and death on the battlefield. Finding food during military campaigns was even harder. Most of the time, soldiers had no choice but to raid nearby villages. These raids weren't just for plunder. They were a matter of survival. Finding a bit of cheese or a sack of grain could sometimes be more valuable than capturing a castle. Even building a fire was risky. The smoke could easily reveal the camp's location to enemy scouts. So most soldiers relied on pre-packed dry foods. Hard to chew, terrible to taste, but life-saving all the same. Every soldier carried a small ration bag. It was their lifeline on the battlefield. Inside, you'd usually find a piece of dried meat, a rock-hard loaf of bread, a slice of aged cheese, maybe a few dried fruits or nuts, and, most importantly, a water skin. Water was so precious that soldiers would sometimes fight over a single sip, because one thing was clear: hunger might weaken you, but thirst would kill you fast. Today, modern soldiers are fed with specially prepared meals, MRES, or meals ready to eat. Even in the middle of a battlefield, they can get their daily calories with a simple pack. These meals are carefully designed, balancing carbs, fats, proteins, and essential vitamins. But in the Middle Ages, there was no such luxury. A soldier had to treasure every bite they could find. Sometimes they survived for a week on nothing but stale bread and a bit of cold water. Today, a soldier might need 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day. Back then, medieval warriors often scraped by on less than 1,000, and yet still marched for days, carrying heavy armor on their backs. Of course, there were rare moments of celebration. After a major victory, the camp would come alive. Huge fires would be lit and hunters would bring in fresh game. Stews would simmer in giant pots, and everyone would eagerly line up for a piece of meat. Wine and ale would flow freely, spears would beat the rhythm for songs, and epic tales of battle would be sung. Those moments were like little slices of heaven amid the brutal reality of war. And even today, the ones who might truly understand the hardships of a medieval soldier are professional athletes. Think about it. A marathon runner or a triathlete trains their body and mind to endure extreme conditions. They carefully manage their energy, eat at the right times, and monitor their hydration. Just like the warriors of old, they have to pace themselves wisely. The big difference? Today's athletes have coaches, nutritionists, supplements, and medical teams. Back then, survival was a matter of instinct and experience. Another modern comparison would be extreme endurance challenges, shows like Survivor, where contestants try to live off minimal supplies for weeks. But even they have emergency crews standing by if something goes wrong. In the Middle Ages, there was no safety net. Hunger could mean weakness, but thirst and starvation meant death. That's why medieval soldiers had not only bodies of iron, but wills of steel. Because staying alive wasn't just about swinging a sword. It was about mastering hunger, thirst, and sheer human endurance. Today, the food we eat is scientifically optimized. We know exactly what each nutrient does in the body and which vitamins support which organs. Proteins build muscle. Carbohydrates provide quick energy. Fats supply long-term energy and maintain hormonal balance. Vitamins and minerals play critical roles in everything from immune function to bone health. A modern athlete, whether a soldier or an endurance runner, consumes carefully measured amounts of protein, fats, carbs, and electrolytes every day. The goal? To keep their body running at peak performance. But what about in the Middle Ages? For medieval soldiers, eating wasn't about optimizing performance, it was simply about survival. Calories were the top priority. There was no concern for a balanced diet or vitamin variety. Their typical diet looked something like this: heavy on carbohydrates, stale bread, porridge, and grains. Limited protein, mostly dried meats, and on rare occasions, fresh game. Poor in vitamins and minerals. Fresh fruits and vegetables were luxuries, especially during winter or on long campaigns. This way of eating helped them survive in the short term, but over time their immune systems would weaken. Tooth decay, bone diseases, chronic fatigue, and even illnesses like scurvy were common. Another key difference: water. Today, soldiers have reliable access to clean water. In the Middle Ages, water was often contaminated and carried diseases. That's why lightly alcoholic drinks, like weak beer or watered-down wine, were sometimes safer than drinking water. In short, today, nutrition is a science aimed at maximizing human performance. Back then, it was a daily fight just to live another day. And yet, medieval soldiers were incredibly tough. Their bodies had to endure constant hunger, physical exhaustion, and harsh conditions. Their resilience wasn't built in laboratories, it was forged on the battlefield. So while modern-day diets are carefully planned and balanced, the medieval approach was rough, raw, and all about survival. But at the heart of both is a simple truth. Finding the right energy at the right time is key to staying alive. Medieval soldiers weren't just masters of the sword. They were warriors against hunger, thirst, and pure exhaustion. Every bite they found was a victory. Every sip of water, a miracle. Today, thanks to modern science, athletes, soldiers, and even ordinary people can fully support their bodies. As you sit down for your next meal, maybe spare a thought for those warriors, their beating hearts under heavy armor, their cracked lips, and their unbreakable will to survive. If you're passionate about exploring ancient survival and human resilience, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.